plowed land was covered with wind-filtered soil, a yard thick in the deepest places. 2/3 of his farm was wiped out. 2/3 of it was erased into permanent sterility, and the work of nearly 10 years was entombed. He glanced down at the palms of his hands, for he was thinking of the burning, pulpy blisters that had covered them day after day when he was digging holes with a blunt post auger. He looked up then at the distant ridges of the Powder Mountains. 10 years before, in the morning light, he had been almost able to count the great pines which walked up the slopes, but the whole range had been cut over in the interim, and the thick coat of forest which bound with its roots the accumulated soil of 1,000,000 years had been mowed down. That was why the teeth of the wind had found substance they could eat into. Lindsay did not think about anything for a time. His feet and an automatic impulse that made him turn always to the stock first took him to the barn, where he turned loose the confined animals. Even the mules were glad enough to kick up their heels a few times, and 15 years of hard living could not keep Mustard from exploding like a bomb all over the pasture, bucking as though a ghost were on his back, and knocking up a puff of dust every time he hit the ground. Lindsay was standing with feet spread and folded arms, a huge figure in the door of the barn. He watched the antics of his old horse with a vacant smile, for he was trying to rouse himself and failing wretchedly. Instead, he could see himself standing in line with signed application slips in hand, and then in front of a desk where some hired clerk with an insolent face put sharp questions to him. A month hence, when people asked him how things went, he would have to say, "I'm on the county." When he'd gone that far in his thinking, his soul at last rose in him, but to such a cold, swift altitude that he was filled with fear. He found his lips repeating words, stiffly, whispering them aloud. "I'll be damned, and dead first." The fear of what he would do with his own hands grew stronger and stronger, for he felt that he had made a promise, which would be heard recorded by that living inmost God of all honest men, his higher self. Once more, automatically, his feet took him on to the next step in the day, breakfast. Back in the shanty, his lips twitched with disgust as he started frying potatoes. The rank smell of the bacon grease mounted to his brain and gathered in clouds there, but his unthinking hands finished the cookery and dumped the fried potatoes into a tin plate. A faint chorus came down to him then out of the windless sky. He snatched the loaded pistol from the holster that hung against the wall and ran outside, for sometimes the wild geese flying north came very low over the hill as they rose from the marsh south of it. But now he found himself agape, like a schoolboy staring up. He should have known by the dimness of the honking, and by the melancholy harmony which distance added to it, that the geese were 1/2 mile up in the sky. Thousands of them were streaming north in a great wedge that kept shuffling and reshuffling at the open ends, 10 tons of meat on the wing. A tin pan crashed inside the shack, and Caesar came out on wings with his tail between his legs. Lindsay went inside and found the plate of potatoes overturned on the floor. He called, "Come in here, Caesar, you damn old thief. Come on in here and get it if you want the stuff. I'm better without it." The dog came back skulking. From the doorway, he prospected the face of his master for a moment, and then he sneaked to the food on the floor and began to eat guiltily. But Lindsay already had forgotten him. All through the hollow, which a week before had been a shining trimmer of yellow-green wheat stalks, the rising wind of the morning was now stirring little airy whirlpools and walking ghosts of dust that made a step or two and vanished. It seemed to Lindsay that he endured long enough. He was 35. He had 25 years of hard work behind him. And he would not, by God, he would not be a government pensioner. The wild geese had called a gun into his hand. He felt suddenly that it must be used for one last shot anyway. As for life, there was a stinking savor of bacon that clung inevitably to it. He looked with fearless eyes into the big muzzle of the gun. Then Mustard whinnied, not far from the house, and Lindsay lifted his head with a faint smile, for there was a stallion's trumpet sound in the neigh of the old gelding, always, just as there was always an active devil in his heels and his teeth. He combined the savage instincts of a wildcat with the intellectual, patient malevolence.